Thank you.
I see we have some of our associates from the Anjana Sudha Academy here.
Yes, Maharaj, that's wonderful.
They were saying that your podcasts are wonderful.
Oh, actually, the podcast will become wonderful now that they have been graced by your presence.
Yeah, okay. And this way we'll pass the day.
Maharaj, is it possible for you to turn on your video, Maharaj?
Oh, I thought it was on. Excuse me. Okay, yeah. There we go.
Humble obeisances. Thank you, Maharaj. So,
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
shall I start the recording, Maharaj?
Yeah, whatever you like. Yeah, we're just here for a little chat with you.
Yes, Maharaj.
Recording in progress.
Hare Krishna, Hanumatpresaka Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you very much for joining for the Monks podcast today. It has been a long cherished desire to have your association individually as well as to share it with others. When you had come to GV and we had met, I could say that was one of the most inspiring intellectual and spiritual discussions that I've ever had with anyone. So I crave for it. I don't know whether I have like laulya for Krishna, but I do have laulya, greed for association like you provide. So I'm very immensely grateful, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada said that too much devotion is a symptom of a thief.
Well, yeah. I'm happy to be called a thief if that helps me get your association.
Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj. So when I have heard, I've been following you on your blogs and I have heard some of your classes. What I'm amazed by is the intellectual width as well as the depth of what the topics that you discuss. So since you mentioned today, I thought we could discuss about Western literature, maybe the foundation of Western literature, one of the founding figures of Western literature, we could say. You know, the primary authors is Shakespeare. So how could somebody see Shakespeare from a spiritual or a devotional perspective?
Well, there's let's see where to start. For us, books are the basis.
Yes.
When Prabhupada came to San Francisco, Berkeley in 1975, I think it was 75, we just moved from the temple in San Francisco, which had been a mortuary, 455 Valencia Street. And we moved to San Francisco, and it was Berkeley. It was six city lots. It was a big, big building. Probably pleased. And I remember, I personally heard from the lips of my spiritual master. There were maybe 5 reporters there from big media, and one of them asked, "Swamiji, what will happen to your movement when you die?" And now you're hearing from my lips. So Prabhupada said very, firmly, he said, "I will never die. I will live forever in my books." Okay, and so then we have complete access to Prabhupada, And of all this, of course, we have a separate little program called the Bhaktivedanta Library, where we're sorting Prabhupada's books systematically and looking at them in their relationship. But Prabhupada says in the preface to Nectar of Instruction that Upadeshamrita constitutes first instructions for neophyte devotees. And we find it that way, such a wonderful basis from our side, from our literature. And in there, Prabhupada says, he quotes, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagata vyakta mortena mastani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavasitaha. And he uses it to illustrate the point that everything is Krishna's energy. He talks about using a microphone, a dictaphone, So and he says that devotees, they understand the way to use everything in Krishna's service, So from that perspective, then of course, some of us like books, somebody else likes painting, somebody else likes gardening, somebody else likes war, so fighting. Yeah, so everything can be used in Krishna service. So I would say from that, very broad perspective, okay, then utilizing different literature. Of course, we approach it as world classical literature,
Okay.
and within that, of course, we have the European, traditions, English language traditions, and then these influence people. This is how people identify who are we, by their literary traditions. Uh,
Just 1 minute,
in
if you don't.
no, go ahead.
So in general, the principle of Yukta Vairagya, of using everything in Krishna's service, that is quite foundational for our movement spread and outreach. But somehow, when we bring it to books and thoughts and worldviews, there is a certain amount of hesitation or even aversion. Because, say,
Yeah.
generally, if somebody's going to use, say, somebody's going to use a computer or a phone, yeah, those can distract us, but they don't seem directly to be competitors to our devotion. Whereas when we say, like recently, I have started a group for encouraging devotees to write, and I quote from various contemporary authors about how to write well and how to get the motivation to write. So one devotee asked a question over there, and I already don't have time to read Prabhupada's books enough. And how will I? How should I? Should I make? How will I make time for reading other books on writing? So then the answer I gave at that time is, if you see writing as a service, then that, sorry, just let me complete this. So sorry, then writing as a service, then that is service time. That is not your sadhana time. If you are building a temple for Krishna, if you're learning to cook for Krishna, you may want to read some books for doing it better, and you wouldn't put that time for those books in competition with your spiritual books. So that idea of Yukta Vairagya, that we can apply it even in the intellectual domain to engage with books and ideas and worldviews, somehow that is not so widespread or not so accepted. Have you also observed something like that, Maharaj?
Oh, yeah, very much. And I would say it's because, most people are not inclined towards books. Most people are not literary. They don't look at them that way. What can you say is that it's just a fact. Even in ordinary any ordinary culture, people who sometimes, what is it, when the Russians were conquering places, they would take anybody who had glasses and kill them. Yep. because that means they could read, Okay. And the same way, Prabhupada, the books are the basis, What Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for example, we know him, right? There's a very famous document where he describes how we should, what mentality, what attitude, what bhava, what consciousness we should have when we are in other people's place of worship at the time of worship.
That's a very beautiful quote. Yeah.
Being
in a very respectful mood and see that God is manifesting in a different way from what I know. But
yeah, the same God I'm worshiping is being worshipped here. He says, and I can, therefore I can, steal, a few things from this process to enhance my own process of worshiping my deities. But because I don't belong.
Does he talk about stealing, or that's
no? I think he says just take some things.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And it's a fact. I mean, Prabhupada added the Sunday feast. There's no Sunday feast in Indian tradition. Yeah. And then he goes on to say that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, but because I don't belong to this specific tradition, I won't be participating in the details of the worship. So same way, we adopt certain things. We can take, and if Lord Caitanya specifically, he took sannyas in a Mayavadi sampradaya, right, to be able to establish his people appreciate his position to communicate, and then he sat there he had to have known something of Shankara's philosophy to be able to communicate with them, his ideas and so on, yeah. And so for both reasons, to build bridges so that we can take advantage of the different resources, and then they can take advantage of our resources, and in that way we can build a strong world, to combat the basic principles of illusion. Yeah.
Can you just repeat the two purposes, Maharaj? To build bridges and to...
If we build it, for example, we're especially focusing on Carl Jung a lot, but let's look at Socrates. Shakespeare. I had so much association with Hansaduta. He was our zonal acharya during the Guru era, and a lot very nice in many ways, very nice. But I think it was he said that Prabhupada said, you can teach Shakespeare in the Gurukula. And if you want to understand word power, then you should read Shakespeare. Yeah. And I've seen that. He was like an empowered person. There's other discussions about this, but it seems that he was being empowered by some Gandharva or something. But even still, the potency of his words is so powerful that it communicates very deeply to people. And it's not only just the words, because he has formed our perspective on certain iconographic issues. For example, you've heard of the movie The Lion King, right?
Yes.
Yeah. By Walt Disney. The original investment was like $45 million to make the movie. Yeah. Yeah. Do you know how much is made how much money is made since it was first produced?
No idea. Much more than that?
$490 million profit been made so far. And it's still going. And from the very beginning, there's just no bones about it. They just say it. It is based upon Hamlet. It's based upon Hamlet. The evil uncle kills the father. The young prince has to fight. So it's the same iconographic, the same bhava is being presented, and it's a big part then of our whole Western ethos of who we are. What to speak of the contemplations, the introspection. So that's what I would say, is that it's an opportunity for us who are born in a certain culture to be able to take the Vedic perspective into our heart. Oh, I understand that. Yeah, I know that. I grew up with that, And then also to find the language to be able to express it from the other side, Yeah.
Yes.
I can go on forever here.
So just to rearticulate the 2 points you mentioned, first is that we can build bridges by getting the language to communicate, as well as the way what is influencing people today. We can connect that with Krishna. So it's both to reach them and to help them to reach Krishna's wisdom in some way, both ways.
Yeah, it's the same. Dealing with this, for example, what is the most famous phrase in Hamlet? What is the most famous question in the world?
To do
the
or
whole
not
world.
To do.
Yeah, see what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
To be. Okay, so we see Arjuna at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he's sitting there looking at the Kauravas, looking at Bhishma and Drona, and wondering, to be or not to be. That is the question. To take arms against a sea of Kauravas, to fight, perchance to die, to dream. But there's the problem. For who knows what dreams will come after we have shuffled off this mortal coil. I would count myself king of infinite space, bound up in a nutshell, if only I did not have bad dreams. So you see, you're coming out of it, but you've been influenced by this, by the same culture. So it's like
I never heard Gita being presented in Shakespearean language. It's quite a transporting experience just to hear a few thoughts presented like that.
It's tough. We started developing this. We have a program. I sent you the PowerPoint show we were using.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe, what is it, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And there's two major themes in Hamlet, that one drama. It's people say that amongst all the works of Shakespeare, Hamlet is like the Himal is like you say this. Hamlet is like the Mount Everest amongst the Himalaya mountains. There's also King Lear. There's Macbeth, and they're all very intense. There's a Taming of the Shrew. They're all very appropriate for Western or even educated Indian audiences who are international, who actually people who grew up with the influence of the British Raja.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You say, oh, now I understand our heritage. Now I understand how we got this. Now I understand, sir, why you're speaking British English, sir. Sir, I am speaking British English. Yeah, well, you have a.
That's interesting. I was preparing for this talk. I was looking at the influence of Hamlet or Shakespeare's work in general in India. So it seems in the pre-independence and post-independence times, there were quite a few movie renditions of Shakespeare's work. Even Hamlet has been rendered in Hindi, but nothing in the last few decades, not so much.
Yeah.
Nothing became so much popular. So it seems that maybe as the world changed, but even in the Western world, I would say that in humanities, is Shakespeare that much of an influence now? Because it's more of critical analysis and
hey, Baba.
deconstructionist.
How many Indians have watched The Lion King?
Oh, okay. But hardly anyone knows that Lion King is actually derived from Hamlet.
The poison works no matter how you get it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. It's the same story of young men. Okay, I've got to fight my evil uncle, protect my father, whatever it is. Marry the pretty girl. Yeah.
So, Maharaj, you mentioned earlier that those who are already familiar with Shakespeare, then if they can see it from a more spiritual perspective, it builds bridges. So, can you tell something about your journey, where you also avid reader of Shakespeare before you're introduced to Krishna consciousness, and did you make a conscious decision to revisit those literature at a particular time in your life as a sannyasi, as a devotee?
I was growing up like most of us. I had a tail, like that, whatever. And when you go to school, they make you read. Okay, gosh, Anyway, I was doing it. Okay, it was boring, but then I discovered, juvenile literature, children's books in our local library, which is a really good library, big library, and boy, then the whole world changed, because here were books with adventures about boys, being lost in the wilderness and having to survive, and so many wonderful books about stories about children, which were interesting. So at that point, my whole opinion about literature reading changed. Then for my teachers, my family, there wasn't much literary stuff going on. My mother and some things, but there wasn't a lot. My godmother was giving me some Christian books, but they were very, ethical, moral type things. They were nice. But in this public schools, there were some things there, some stimulating things were there. In the church, some things. But then in high school, you started to get into pieces. In the secondary, some people. One of my professors, Benjamin Leaf, very nice guy. He gave me just a fourth-hand photocopy of the best literature in the Western world, classics, Candide and Rousseau and this kind of stuff. So I started reading some of those, and those were good, And then I think not so much the teachers, but authors would refer to other books, and I would look for those. And I got into Albert Camus and so many things. And Shakespeare was really difficult because the language is difficult. It's very, very, it's 500-year-old language and stuff, and the concepts. But then somewhere along there, after I became a devotee, I started looking at the stuff. And one thing is interesting, because a very big volume, the complete works of Shakespeare, was the river source, something or other thing. But it was very attractive, the complete works of Shakespeare. And so I remember I got that. And that's when I started to begin to get back into the relationships with Shakespeare. But Shakespeare was just one of the people, like I mentioned, others such as, especially Albert Camus, Carl Jung, especially we've gotten into now, probably recommended. Yeah. Yeah. One point here, you're like this. I can remember it was in the quadrangle of the Gurukula in Vrindavan, and Gopi Puranadana. We knew each other a little bit, so we saw each other. We said, "Oh, hello, hello." We're talking, and I was talking about how I was having this success in preaching, even amongst devotees and stuff. With classical literature and looking at Shakespeare and reaching out. We've had very good success with it, approaching very prominent people. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said one time, and I think he was there, he said Prabhupada gave an entire lecture on the Merchant of Venice in London one evening.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. And then he said sometime later he stumbled in a bookstore in Calcutta on a book, I think it was called Venetia Vanik. And it was like a Bengali translation. It's like you're saying that sometime there during the Raja or after, people in India also were there. So it appears that, Prabhupada, it's like there's so many things that Prabhupada wanted to do. He gave us the basis. He's the foundation. He's the founder Acharya. And we're building upon things that people have built upon Prabhupada's foundation. But I think there's a lot of space in the foundation where nobody's even started to build. How many people do you know are working with Carl Jung? But at the same time, some people. Who's our sannyasi from Russia? Bhakti
Vigyan Maharaj?
Yeah, I just met him in passing. We're both running a different direction in Mayapur. He said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working with Jung a bit." And he said, "Oh, Jung is essential for our preaching."
Oh.
But of course, he's a Russian. He's a Russian, and they're very mental people.
Oh.
In Russia, there are two options in the wintertime. When Russian devotee told me this, Vashishta, there's two options in the winter in Russia time. You can drink alcohol or you can read. And he said most people do both.
Okay.
So very intense, profound literary tradition. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Maharaj, when you said Prabhupada gave a lecture on Merchant of Venice, is that recorded? Or
no, but wait, the way Gopi Puranadana was talking about it was like maybe like there were 6, 10, 8 people there one evening, and Prabhupada was giving his lecture darshan thing, and he went into it. Because I think it's a fact that, of course, many stories that Prabhupada specifically avoided dealing with certain things because he was the acharya for common people. And therefore, so people wouldn't be confused. He avoided hatha yoga. He wouldn't associate in certain places. And some people, I can't remember his name now, Bhagavat, there's a whole story about how Prabhupada was talking so enthusiastically about Gandhi the evening before with Bhagavat on the rooms of the buildings in Bombay. And they had those buildings there when they first took over. And Bhagavat said everybody had left, and Prabhupada started talking about Gandhi, and he was going on about him, how wonderful he was, and such nice feeling and sentiment, So next day they were walking on the beach in Bombay, and they went farther than they normally did. And then finally Prabhupada stopped and turned, away from the beach and just folded his hands and did pranams, And everybody was thinking maybe Narada Muni had come or something because nobody could see anything. But then Bhagavat was looking, and the distance was a very, very nice, little monument with a bust of Gandhi. And so he was thinking, wow, Prabhupada, last night was talking about this. And then they're walking back on the beach, and one, maybe Mr. Patel or somebody started talking all about the glories of Gandhi, And he was on Prabhupada's left, and Bhagavat was on his right. And Prabhupada was kind of tolerating for a while, but then he said, but something about, but that is not philosophy, kind of minimizing Gandhi to some degree, But then he turned to Bhagavat and on his right side, and he winked, at him. Meaning, you know how I feel about Gandhi, but here it is. I have to talk to these people and so on. So we're gonna, carry on our role as the acharya, yeah. But different. And when they did it, if they did it properly, sometimes Prabhupada would stop, and other times he would say, "Yeah, okay, you've done it well. This is good. It's a good thing you've done." And so that it is. You're saying it's a big challenge not to get sucked up into the the passion of the Mahabharata or the passion of Shakespeare, and look for the spiritual advantage of it.
Mhm. This is amazing, Maharaj, what you said, that there are dimensions of Prabhupada which most of us are not aware of.
Oh,
And there's so many aspects. I recently came across a quote of Prabhupada where Prabhupada is telling that if you're approaching educated people, then they will be puffed up. And he says they have a right to be puffed up. And rather than telling, he says you should learn the art of approaching such people and appreciating different points of view. So that is quite amazing. So it seems Prabhupada was very multifaceted and he used different approaches at different times. And
oh
sometimes
yes.
we have reduced him to maybe one particular approach, or that's the prominent image of him in our movement. So I would never have dreamt from what I knew that Prabhupada would give a talk on Merchant of Venice.
But again, it was, Gopi Paranadhana was there, small people in Bengal, sorry, in England,
Okay.
So, what better place?
Yeah.
When another devotee told me, was that Bhadravardhan Das, he was there in Paris with Hansaduta, I think, or something like that, Bhagavan. And so Prabhupada came, and French people are very, very famous for being arrogant and everything else, so on. Yeah. So it was a big hall, and they did good advertising, and maybe maybe 400 people or something, And he said, Prabhupada came up there, was like very regally, and you could tell all the French people were immediately very, very, suspicious and everything else. So he started to introduce them kirtan, and he said, Prabhupada said, I hear that French people are very fond of revolution. So I propose a revolution. He said, bong. It was Viva the Prabhupada. Everybody was like, everybody. And then he finished it off and he said, okay, so now we're going to be installing these deities of Radha and Krishna. Krishna has his consort, his lover, and we're going to be installing our Radha Krishna deities here because we hear that French women are among the most beautiful in the world. So, and he went on about also Nepalese women. So Krishna has come in looking for a French girlfriend. He finished off that way, and then it's exactly how to touch people, and not in any way invalid. Yeah, French. I mean, Krishna probably did go to Paris because he's looking for a French girlfriend. But, I mean, I've seen these kind of things. I'm sorry to say, we're worshiping a kind of a strange kid.
Strange kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want.
This point about Merchant of Venice, I'm fascinated by that.
Oh my
in
goodness.
today's world, there's a whole series of books which they call as popular philosophy.
Oh yeah.
Blackwell, one of the publishers, that published it, and they are of course mostly engaging it with contemporary culture. So they have Star Wars and philosophy, Harry Potter and philosophy, and Doctor Who and philosophy, and it seems these books do quite well. And they of course they don't do as well as the movies or TV serials, but still somewhere it's a way. So just as there are science popularizers, there are scientists, and there are those who are popular science writers. They make scientific concepts accessible. So this whole genre of writers, they call themselves as popular philosophy writers. So science philosophy popularizers. So so actually no, once in America also, when I was there, I gave a talk on Star Wars and Bhakti wisdom. So
yeah.
it's quite a big thing. There's a lot of correlations, but I didn't dare to put that talk online anywhere because the first question would have come is, what is the Indian brahmachari doing even knowing about Star Wars? So actually, I found reading that book was very informative because it found that these are very these are ways in which we can reach intellectual people who will not directly read didactic or say a particular tradition's books. But
Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj.
No, it is. And boy, I mean, boy, how long can you be fascinated by a godless display of energy? I mean, it's probably science says that. I mean, okay, you
Beautiful.
put mixed bicarbonate in the soda and vinegar and pop the top off of your jar in your kitchen or something. Okay, you know, and so you have different effects, but everybody, you know, basically, Papa says as soon as you have a human body, you're interested in deeper questions about, you know, for example, Hamlet is I mean, so many things. Hamlet is full of this concept of betrayal. You know, it's there with his uncle, and it's also there with his mother. You know, mother.
She marries immediately.
Yeah. And so the concept of betrayal and trust, you know, is extremely, who is trustworthy, you know? Yeah. And who is trustworthy with what? With our money or with the most confidential things within our heart, you know? Dadati pratigvinati guhyamakyati prachiti. So we learn different kinds of people to talk about these things, and that's what, you know, influences the Baba advance, you know? So it's a very, very, so these people like Steven Spielberg and different people like that, the ones that become classics, world classical literature, it's not that they would say philosophy, dry, big, logical stuff. Yeah, maybe they have some bigger logical concept in the thing, but it's more, it goes beyond that to the iconographic level, the Baba, so the Booty, and it touches these iconic, you know, images. You know, the Virgin shrouded in snow, the youth pined away with desire. You know, that's William Blake. It's a poem. Yeah, and all these people. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you connecting iconography with bhav and buddhi? Are you saying that this iconography resonates with the deepest emotions of the human heart or the deepest longings of the intellect, or how are you connecting the two?
This is a whole section on Sankhya, which is the one we're doing now. The mind is engaged in thinking, analytical process, mathematics, grammar. You know, and according to Carl Jung, this all goes on pretty much in the head. You know, I'm thinking about these things. In the mode of ignorance, I'm involved in the senses. I become absorbed in seeing something. I lose my intelligence by seeing an attractive physical thing. It's there, but it's absorbed. You know, all the water is absorbed in the sponge. There's no water anywhere, but it's there. You know? So I become absorbed in the sensual experience. And someone slaps me and says, "Come to your senses, man." So, you know, so you're not absorbing the sense objects, you're absorbing your senses. Okay. And behind it, maybe a little bit of thought process running to be able to put your pants on properly, you know, and not, you know, and tie your tie. Okay. But then somebody else is more civilized. What do you call it? Anamaya, pranamaya, manamaya. Okay, he's dignified person. He plans, he thinks, he makes arrangements, has ethical and moral things. But this is where Jung was going beyond the manas, you know, Indriya, manas, you know, a whole big lecture, and then Buddhi, you know. So the level of Buddhi, Introduction to Nectar of Instruction, probably says Krishna consciousness depends upon the attitude of the follower.
Attitude of the follower, yes.
So your Buddhi establishes your perspective, your attitude. Antarastrita Shri Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. So the word Prabhupada is using for consciousness, which matches the hippie word, which is coming from Carl Jung, is bhava. So what is your bhava? What is your attitude? What is your perspective? And this is what Jung and other people are calling iconographic thinking, as opposed to this linear, logical thinking, which is more in the mode of passion, the mind. The iconograph is the mantra, the yantra, is something which we can take in all at one time. It's if you take the Western drama theory from Aristotle and you compare it with drama theory from Bharata Muni, this is Nectar of a Devotion by Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu. For Aristotle, the essence of the drama was the plot. You know, one Manipuri boy's sister is kidnapped by evil Burmese drug dealers. So he gets some friends and they go and rescue his sister and blow up the drug factories. You know, Kung Fu Killers of Hare Krishna Mountain. Okay, so you see, it's a plot. It's a plot. It should go into one sentence. This is a very important thing. You should be able to state the whole plot for the whole movie in one sentence, really, basically. Okay, but for Aristotle, it was the plot, but for Bharata Muni, it was the bhava. That when you come out of the movie, you should have a different perspective on things. It should have touched your heart and changed the bhava. Your iconographic, view of the world is changing. Yeah, so that's how, using the word. Yeah.
So is it something similar to, we talk about the brain polarity, the logical brain and the right brain and the left brain? One is more intuitive and the other is more rational and step-by-step linear?
I would say it's behind that. I would say the mind uses the brain, but the brain is based upon the bhava, Okay. And so when we die, if a lot of the mind is based upon a certain kind of brain, then it gets lost in the process, But if it's based upon bhava, buddhi, then it survives, it goes on to the next body. We can carry mental substance with us. We can't. The physical body is gone. Okay, yeah, but some thoughts and complexes of thoughts using, Jungian terms and modern terms, those go with us. And people, what do you call child prodigies? There's one. Just look up child prodigies on the YouTube, and boy, you'll find, atom bombs against, for reincarnation. But then behind that, the bhava, the perspective, the attitude, that yam vapi, smaram bhavan. The bhava, the attitude, the perspective. And some babies are born with terror in their eyes, and some babies are born with, the world is meant to give me candy, Women know this, but babies from the second they in the womb, they got a different attitude, different bhava about things. Yeah. So the left-right brain, I think is more dependent upon, that's there. It's in psychology and it's neurophysiology and also in the Vedas. Devahu and Devahu and Pitrahu, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One is more, I would say, one is more related to, buddhi, and one is more related to Indriya. Yeah. Logical thinking. Yeah. Yes, but let's just see, it's a big area to try and connect these things, because when you connect them, so it's like, as soon as Prabhupada was able to start making movies, right? Things changed. As soon as Prabhupada was able to get what's it called? It's called linotype machine. It wasn't a Xerox machine, but it was similar. Then he could start producing a magazine. So as soon as we have access to all of the Jungian language and or Shakespearean, all the Shakespearean stuff, we can start putting messages across like anything, to a certain community of people. They'll just like, they'll touch them. This is my icon. This is my culture. I mean, what are the American icons? America, forget England for a while.
Statue of Liberty.
These are images, but personalities that Americans identify with, and
maybe George Washington, or
something. Yeah. How about James Bond?
Okay, you're talking about that. Okay, yeah. James Bond. Yeah,
this is what. Yeah. Now notice, James Bond. I think like something like, over 2,000 people have tried to kill James Bond. Pablo was watching one of these things and he said, "I'm still alive." and James Bond has killed something like, 1,000 people. And he's had, I guess we got I'm sure they're illicit or not, but I guess they're illicit sexual relation with something like 178 women or something like that, So this is, only God can do this, And if you notice, it's gone on. I remember the first movies when I was in high school. So you see, it's gone on as it's been a popular American iconographic figure since the very beginning of who we are. We are people who don't necessarily trust our institution. James Bond many times has to take things in his own hand and disobey his authorities. And Americans do that. British and Germans don't do that. Americans, we have this whole thing of being rebellious against authorities.
Yeah.
Now, Americans generated their consciousness of who they were out of revolution, right? They killed their relationship. They engaged in a little bit of patricide. Canada didn't. Canadians consider themselves a part of the Commonwealth, So Americans don't have any heritage. So you may notice that James Bond is an American icon, but he is a British spy. so analyzing it that way, that's
still he became an icon.
Yeah, we have to have, who are we? We have to have our parents and our ancestors, So Americans want this, they want to have the British heritage, but at the same time too, they want to, reject it. And that's why you're going to get, preaching to this kind of people, getting messages across, getting mass media messages across. You got to realize these things, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, these are many fascinating subjects, and we would love to discuss these in future podcasts. If we come back to Shakespeare for now, so if I understand,
why not?
If I understand the flow, what you're saying is Shakespeare's works have contributed to many of the icons that shape Western civilization, and that's why we can connect. If we can connect with those icons, then our message will become much more accessible and relevant for people.
Yeah, and the other side of the coin is that people who have been raised up within this iconography, which is, anybody who was a part of the British Empire, which includes America and includes India, then will be able to understand the messages in the Bhagavatam from the perspective. Now I understand. For example, it's only basically through Shakespeare and things like that I can understand what a king is. We never had a king in America, contemporary ideology. So it has to go back to our cultural heritage for me to understand what is, this whole idea of civilization, of royalty and that kind of reality. But in India, you have that, you have that heritage and stuff. And so it was very easy. He's our king. In America, we don't have kings. We have exact opposite. We killed them,
Yeah.
And so fascism didn't take off well here,
Yeah.
But in Germany and in Japan, it took off well, Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Maharaj, for this, not many people read books. So even those devotees who are going to engage in this level, they are not going to be many at one level. And another thing is that while engaging at this level, we may have to maybe refine our definition of preaching, because through this, it's not necessarily people may immediately become devotees, but it says the bridges can be built, and at least something which is incomprehensible becomes intelligible. Okay, this is what you are saying. This is what you believe. This is what you people do.
Yeah.
So in one sense, it's a more subtle, we could say, foundational level of outreach, isn't it?
It very much has that aspect to it, I would say, very much. But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, if you can, I remember there's one big GBC controversy. Right after Prabhupada left, then we made this big mistake about zonal acharyas and everybody, Hansaduta, Bhagavan, Jayatir, Krishna Maharaj. We were very confused in many ways. So okay, Prabhupada was our guru, and now all of them have to be new Prabhupads, and that was a very simple understanding of the situation. So I went through it with Hansaduta in Berkeley. He was our acharya, and when he had his kind of fall down, and then they wanted everybody, all the disciples he had made, quite a few, hundreds, to really take shelter. They had to have somebody. They had to be reinitiated immediately by somebody else, and they were sending Rameshwar, Bhavananda, and Hridayananda were being pushed in there, so on. And okay, they should immediately be reinitiated by one of these people, and some people were inclined to support this, some people weren't. I wasn't, And so then I was just thinking that what was it? that I just mentioned that, wow, the same thing in Hamlet, that his, his, he was very disturbed because his mother, when her husband,
Wow. What
got
a
older, died.
correlation.
Yeah. Then she got very quickly remarried, and he said, he told his friend Horatio. Horatio came and said, "Oh, I came to see your father's funeral," and he said, "No, don't say that. Say you came to see my mother's marriage." And
Yeah.
Horatio said, "Yeah, well, they came a little quick, one after the other, you know." And then Hamlet said, "Oh, no, we should be thrifty. The cooked meat at the funeral feast did but do double duty as cold cuts at the wedding feast." You know, she got remarried. She remarried so quick that the meat wasn't even cold from the funeral. You know, and I just saw it. Wow, Trey Rishi, Subdhamana Mars, Trivikram Swami, they all went, yeah. If somebody's been initiated by a guru, it's a fact. This is a very deep personal thing, and you can't just go shoving them to be initiated by somebody else. It's actually unchaste, for us even to ask such a question. So I saw how the words just boom. It was deep. It was even me.
My God.
Yes,
It's
the cold cuts from the wedding feast. And the palau, the rice from the Janmashtami feast was used as palau for Prabhupada's, what do you call it? Feast. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So in one sense, just like say when we become Krishna conscious, we see Shastra and our scriptural points being demonstrated in the world around us.
Mhm.
So similarly, if somebody has read Shakespeare and has internalized it, then they will also see it. So in a sense, that is also like a living text,
Yeah.
which can enhance our vision.
Yeah. And then Hansaduta told us that Prabhupada said, every single psychological circumstance you can encounter is in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so we'll see it in these classical stories that people are kind of like using to decide who I am. And we'll just see it in people's dealings. And we'll see, okay, this is what's happening. I'm in this drama now. And the Bhagavatam tells me how to make this a wholesome drama, a healthy drama. It tells me what's going to happen. It tells me who's going to make this out alive and how to help them play their role properly. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Maharaj, continuing with this point now about how you were able to see in one sense a reenactment of the Hamlet in the situation in ISKCON at that time, what Gertrude did at that time. So when we were seeing say Shakespeare from a Krishna conscious perspective, so what all? So do we see that at one level, Shakespeare himself was a religious person and he wove in religious themes, or is it that by our Krishna conscious we can see there are universal themes which we see over there, or is it how does the Krishna conscious vision of such literary figures work?
The ambience at the time of this is many interesting things. Can I share my screen for 1 second?
Yes, please, Maharaj.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay. And then what I'm looking for here is I have a little, okay. What do you see?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. So here we have the gopis praying to goddess Durga. Okay, and the Prabhupada says we can use anything for Krishna. It's a motivation. Lord Caitanya, listening to Sarvabhauma, adjusting to Prakashananda. Okay. And here's Hansaduta with Prabhupada. And there's a brahmachari behind them there. You know who that is?
No, it's you.
It's I forget his name, Su something. That's Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj when he was a brahmachari.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. Shruti Priya Devi is his good disciple. Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is Swarup Damodar, Maharaj. He's he's dressed all up, and presenting himself all within their language, within their perspective, quoting their authorities. And of course, I worked with the Bhaktivedanta Institute. It was very natural. Okay. So here we have it. So we have Rupa Goswami, 1489, 1564, Narottam Das Thakur, 1530. And then we have Shakespeare. So you see Shakespeare's, he was baptized 1564 and died 1616. Yeah, April 16th. And do you know Miguel Cervantes? You know him? Yeah. Do you know what he wrote? His most famous work?
Him directly, but
Don Quixote.
Oh yeah, Don Quixote. Yeah.
If you look at the best, yeah.
In my childhood, I read a children's retelling of that book, but I haven't read in my adulthood. Yeah.
Well, if you look at contemporary, every few years they have some big university does it. What are the 50 best books in the world? And Don Quixote always comes out in the top 10, and many times it's considered the best. And the difficulty is the translation, but now there's a good translation of it. And this is another area. But you notice the dates of their death, the two of them?
Oh, almost the same. It's just one day apart.
That's a little spooky, isn't it? So, and they are, this is what's happening on the continent. On the continent, is in Spain with a tremendous literary tradition, which influences all of South America and so many people, So my hypothesis now, Krishna consciousness, was that they were both pets of the same Gandharva. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
One, I think a master's thesis guy, he said, oh, Miguel Cervantes and William Shakespeare were the same person or something. Okay, it's crazy. But then he went and did a computer analysis of the use of different kinds of metaphors and things like this. And as I heard, it came back, far higher than would have occurred by chance. They were using same metaphors and same things like that and so on. So anyway, this is the ambience. And so from Cervantes, you can understand how things were in Spain at that time. From Shakespeare, you can understand how things were in England at that time. From Agatha Christie, you can understand how things were right after World War II. If you want to read some exciting, detective novels. Yeah. So at that time of Shakespeare, basically I think Shakespeare was either in Shakespeare you'll find Christianity and you'll find Greek philosophy. You'll find Romans and the Latin and Greeks, the classics that carried right in. Oxford, they would study the classics, and that was a big deal. It was learning if you knew Greek, if you knew Latin, if you knew the classics. And so they had Oedipus and things like this, and what is it? How many of Shakespeare's plays are basically Roman themes? Julius Caesar, is most powerful. Hamlet uses phrases. He uses the example of Caesar to emphasize one of his points, a very important point, very nice point. So that at that time, there was a strong ambience of the Greek classics and classical Greek and Roman culture, and also then the other traditions. You see these lines in our culture, which is the Judeo-Christian tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, which had passed through Rome, but still was its own character. And these were heavy things. I mean, the Protestants versus the Catholics versus what do you call it? And
the Reformation.
Yeah, they were killing each other like anything over one or two phrases. They became so fanatics. Yeah. And so he had access to these traditions. Now, Hamlet, I don't know if you've discovered this, Hamlet was based upon an earlier German play, German story. Yeah. Shakespeare didn't invent the baba, the motif, anything. It was coming from an earlier German story, history about this thing. And the Lion King is based upon, yeah. And so if this goes back, I don't know how far back this go. Do we know anybody? Do we know any brother, younger brother who revolted against his older brother after he was gone and didn't give fair treatment to the sons and the cousins?
Well, Dhritarashtra was the older brother, but that happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see this. Wow. And in Macbeth, oh gosh, I mean, one time we were doing this Shakespeare thing, in a big university, one of the biggest universities, and it's most powerful universities in Chile. What is it? Universidad Católica in South. What is it? San Santiago, I think so. Yeah. And okay, thank you. We have the voice from the sky here. Like that. Universidad Católica in Santiago. And very, very nice. Oh yeah, very, very, very nice. It's very respected. When you tell people that we're doing programs there in Chile, they go, "Oh, really? Wow! You've gotten in there? Yeah, and respected." Okay. So anyway, I made my presentation of the ontology, which is where Hamlet describes, what is the world, what happens when you die, how you go to different places, and it's such an identical, cosmology with the Vedas in so many ways, and it's presented in such an intense fashion, But also the second theme, of course, is the fact about his mother's remarriage, the second betrayal, and he discovers that by he does both of them. He tests them by presenting a drama. He has some people he knows. He says, "Can you do this drama tonight before the king and the queen?" "Oh, yeah, we can do that. And I want to rewrite some of your lines a little bit. Can you pick them up?" "Yes, sir. Of course we can pick them up." So he reenacts the murder of his father the way the ghost told him it happened, and his uncle just becomes flipped out and goes out. He says, "Aha! This is confirmed. The ghost is not lying." And then he has a scene where, in the play, the older king in the play, he tells his younger wife, just like Hamlet's father and mother. And the old king says, "I'll be dying soon, and you're young. So after I'm gone, you should." And she says, "Oh no, never say remarriage," like that. She goes on talking about how, let me be chained up in the prison with no hope and all these things, and let me suffer 1,000 deaths, rather than get remarried, And then she has a very, very nice line. She says, "They say a woman who kisses a second man in bed kills the first one twice." Yeah, it's proof. So was it Krisangi? One of our, I think it was Krisangi, one of our disciples there. She became a professional actress. And we were just reading this in front of the class and everything else. And I was taking the point of the king, and she was taking the point of what do you call it? The player queen. And she broke down. She could not handle it. It was so intense and stuff like that. She started laughing at stuff, but she just couldn't handle it, the communication. So this is a big issue. I mean, are we dealing with the issue of remarriage in ISKCON?
Oh God.
Yeah. Under what circumstances is a girl allowed to remarry? Yeah, in ISKCON. I can actually start getting into it more deeply now, but the Parasara's Dharma Shastra talks about this, probably recommends Parasara's Dharma Shastra. He talks about this whole issue of remarriage. And if you want to, and if you go through looking at it in terms of, how Hamlet's dealing with it, he's dealing with the whole issue like that and stuff. And you can see it brings it right to home about, wow, this is so for example, a girl thinking about remarriage, and then she's hearing Hamlet and she goes, "Hey, this is not just my life, this is my kids, and I can see this is a big deal. My getting remarried has a really heavy impact, and have a heavy impact on my children. So let me think again. let me wait in. Let me not use the cold cuts let me not use the cooked meat from the funeral feast for cold cuts for my wedding. I mean, how long does Parasara recommend that the wife wait before she get remarried? I don't think you know, but it's right there. Prabhupada recommends it. He says 6 years. 6 years.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
He says, first class is follow Vishnu Priya, and husband takes sannyas, don't get remarried. You become a sannyasini. Second class, but still dharmic, is to get remarried, is to not get remarried, but enjoy life. Don't become a sannyasini. And third class, but still progressive in Kali Yuga, is after the husband takes sannyas or dies, that the girl can get remarried. And it's still dharma. It's still third class, but it's still considered a dharmic lady.
Oh, okay. So if I understand right, Maharaj, what you are saying is that that Shakespeare's plays have universal themes,
Yeah.
which speak to the human experience in general. So like you get the 2 points of a uncle going against his nephews after the and then the other point of remarriage. So in that sense, if we consider that even our scriptures, they're giving spiritual wisdom, but also they're addressing the universal challenges of human existence, and those have been depicted through stories. So in one sense, it's not that we are, say, importing or imposing some Krishna consciousness into Shakespeare's writings. It is, there are just universal themes, and we are simply observing and connecting.
Yeah, but and again, the ambient is completely religious. There is an afterlife. There is a God who watches things. People are punished for their sins. You know, Baba and these higher sentiments. I think we're going to find some of these within Hamlet and within Shakespeare's works, but most of them are a lot just about, you know, the future, our future life, and how it's, after hearing, after seeing the play, seeing because what's his name? His father. It was Father Claudius, I guess. What, Claudius?
Claudius, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know better than I do, don't you? After he sees this, he's so disturbed, like seeing how it reenacted right in front of him. You know, he doesn't know that Hamlet did it. Maybe God's doing this. He goes off, and the Hamlet finds him, in one quarter of the palace. But there's a very nice soliloquy, as you saw it in our drama that we took it, and Claudius is talking to himself, and he said, my sin hath the primal eldest curse upon it, a brother's murder. And that was the first sin, the killing of Cain. It was Cain killed Abel, the two brothers of Adam. And this is considered the oldest and most reprehensible sin, to kill your brother. It's one of the most horrible things that you can do in Christianity is what's it called? Not patricide. Fratricide. Fratricide's a deep thing, Yeah. And he says, my sin has the most horrible, curse upon it, the killing of a brother. I kill my brother, and but isn't there enough? But isn't there great force in prayer? Hey, we're coming right to our Krishna consciousness bhakti yoga. How much force is there in chanting the holy names and things like this? So he says, isn't there so much force in prayer, that it can keep us from falling down, and once we fall down, it can raise us back up, So this is exactly what Rupa Goswami discusses, right? In the beginning of, it's prophylactic and antiseptic.
Yeah.
Those are the two terms Prabhupada uses, It prevents us from becoming contaminated, praying, chanting the holy names, and once we're fallen, it purifies us. So identical conception is right there. Okay.
Yes.
So he says, okay, but let me kneel and pray, and he said, but how can I pray for forgiveness from God when I'm still possessed of those things for which I did commit the sin, my crown, my kingdom, my queen? I'm still hanging on to these things, right? So which offense is this?
Offense and to continue sinful activities in the strength of the holy name. 9th offense.
No, maintaining material attachments, even
Okay.
He's not giving up his attachments and he realizes that I can pray to God, but look, how can I pray sincerely if I'm still keeping these things which I which I wish to be forbidden? Yeah.
Yes.
He says, okay, trying to translate this into modern Spanish was, oh boy, it was a trip. He talks about having stiff legs, bend, my bend down, stiff legs, and let me pray to God, So he bends and he prays, and he's praying to God to be forgiven for his sins, and maybe something will happen. So that's when Hamlet enters. You see, we did a little dramatic thing in the PowerPoint show,
Yes,
and Hamlet sees him, and Hamlet says, "Yam yam vapi smut." Oh no, Hamlet says, "Now let me do it pat." He pulls his dagger out and says, "Now let me do it pat, and let me do it like precisely. I know he's guilty. I catch him, and I'm going to kill him." And then he thinks,
he will go to heaven.
Yam yam vapi smaram baban tiajati anti kalevaram. And he says, "Hey, I killed this guy while he's
many other
praying."
correlations. Yeah. Huh? Now, there are many other correlations, but among everything I found in Hamlet, that thought was the most striking, because it's so clear that the moment of death, what is if he dies now, he think if he's praying, he will go to God. And I don't want him to go to God, so I won't kill him now.
So he's using a demoniac use of transcendental knowledge. Yeah. And he says, this is not revenge for my father. My father went to hell because he was, caught full of bread and all of his sinful reactions like any Kshatriya, and he has to purge his soul. I, his only son, send his murderer to heaven. This is not revenge. This is salary and payment. Let me catch him in a moment when he's not full of, when he's engaged in gambling and swearing or hunting or engaged in incest twixt the sheets. Killing.
Yeah.
And then his heart will depart for that hell as black as itself, and his heels will kick at heaven. It's intense.
Beautiful language.
So it's like, so maybe, yes, you see, and Prabhupada told George Harrison, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, life is temporary like a drop of water on the leaf of a lotus flower. You say it's temporary like the drop of water on the leaf of a rose. Yeah. So put this yam yam vapi smaram bhavan in a little bit modern language, and people are going to start thinking about it. Yeah, it's a fact, and it's not just getting the beer and the hot dogs. I mean, what kind of consciousness am I developing? Am I even a decent American? What's happened to my country? Yeah.
So Maharaj, just exploring this point a little bit deeper, what you said, you talked about the ontology being similar. Here, it seems soteriology also seems to be similar. The way he's going, where he'll go after toward the end. Now, how do we understand this? Because in some ways, say the thoughts of Plato and Socrates seem to be quite similar to the Gita's insights about the soul. So, so is it that while Shakespeare's environment was mostly Christian, but he also derived some of his ideas from the Greco-Roman tradition? Because it seems Western civilization had these two formative influences. It's more like the religious part came from Christianity, and the rational, reflective, philosophical part came from the Greeks. So
I will now quote Professor Ravi Gupta. aka Radhika Ramandas, some association there.
He's your disciple, Maharaj.
No, he is my guru, sir. Yeah.
Oh God.
I'm in the relationship of him with Uddhava to the gopis. Okay. I have the relationship with him. Yeah, that's going to freak him out if he sees this. So we'll torment Dr. Gupta for a second. Okay. Yeah. I'm Uddhava. He is the gopis. Okay.
Oh God.
Yeah. That's why when I was thinking of names, that's one thing I was thinking of, because he was so much involved in all this dry, metaphysical stuff. That's why I even thought the name Radhika Raman might be, it's good. keep some perspective. Yeah. But he said exactly that you'll find in Judeo-Christian tradition that there's not much cosmology. You look in the Bible and everything else, there's not much there. So when it started becoming integrated with, Emperor Constantinople and everybody else, then they adopted the Greco-Roman cosmology of what is the universe, what is the soul, what is life, all these kind of things. And now they're starting to reconsider it because, hey, we didn't have to do that. That's not really, from our tradition. So they're looking at their own tradition. But yes, it's more, like I say, Socratic, view of the universe.
And so Socratic view also seems to be quite similar to the Gita's view. That's also, there are many points. Socratic view seems to be quite similar to Gita's view. Like, especially when his friend dies, when his, I think, friend's wife dies, and he talks about the reasons for the eternality of the soul. That don't lament because her soul is eternal. That's very similar to the Gita's second chapter.
Oh yeah.
So
especially the Phaedo. The Phaedo? That's
yes,
I would recommend, again, everybody who's interested in these things and preaching on this level. It's almost like if you come to these, this kind of atmosphere, and people are asking, oh, you studied this Indian classics a little bit, but have you ever compared this with other people around the world? You're saying it's so great, but do you know what other people have thought? Have you read the Phaedo? No. Okay. Oh, forget it. Yeah. So, Caitanya is quoting, Jiva Goswami is quoting from all the different, Mimamsa Shastras and all these things in the Sandarbhas, what I understand. He expects that you know all these things before he starts talking about it. He's talking to postgraduate people. So the Phaedo, I think every devotee, was the Benjamin Jowett translation, is very stimulating. And what you see is many, 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 many arguments that Prabhupada uses are identical, with the arguments. I mean, I never understood the classifications that Prabhupada was using in terms of, what's it called? Efficient cause, ultimate cause, and material cause of things. What are these coming from? And then maybe like 10, 12 years ago, these are Aristotle's categories. The ultimate cause is God. The efficient cause is the father who gives the keys to the car to the boys, and the material cause of their problem is the beer. So they were caught drinking after the game and pulled over, and they ended up in jail. And the police called the father and said, "Hey, we got your sons here. They're a little drunk, and we pulled them over. Found some beer bottles in the car." So who's the criminal? The ultimate cause is God. The efficient cause is the father, and the material cause is the beer. So do we arrest the beer? Okay, pick it up.
Okay.
So these are Aristotle's categories, and he's of course a grand disciple of Socrates.
Yeah.
So Socrates is the Phaedo. You find they're arguing about the eternality of the soul. And Socrates says it's not. Nobody could say my greatest enemy, the comic philosophers, the greatest enemies. Even they could not say I'm being speculative or anything else. The glass of poison is on the table, and I have a choice of taking it or not. So is the soul immortal? And in so many arguments, Alfred North Whitehead. He was the philosopher from Harvard. He was Bertrand Russell's guru.
Historian.
Whitehead.
Yeah. Prominent historian. In
Whitehead, I think it was chair of philosophy, but philosophy and history are tied together.
Yeah, in India, one of his quotes is quite prominently portrayed that he says, "The chapter in world history which had a Western beginning needs to have an Indian ending, if it is not self-destruction." So
is that Whitehead or the other guy that Prabhupada met? Yeah, from Australia.
Arnold Toynbee. Sorry.
Yeah, Toynbee. Toynbee is also one of these super giants.
Yeah.
Same way. But then Whitehead is from Harvard also.
Oh, right. But, sorry, I got confused.
He says the safest way to characterize all Western philosophy is to say that the entire thing is a footnote to Socrates. Dialectical spiritualism, Prabhupada like Socrates, and he liked Carl Jung, and practically speaking, everybody in between. He was, yeah. So the Phaedo is, like you're saying, it's one concept after another, and yeah. So world classical literature, Hamlet, cosmology, Yeah.
Mm. So then, there are two things we broadly discussed. One is with respect to seeing Shakespeare from a Krishna conscious perspective. One
Yeah.
is there are ethical dilemmas or life situations which are
Ooh,
universal, which are,
yes.
and then second is that
Wow.
for addressing those issues, he draws on worldviews and motives which have significant similarities with the Vedic
Yes.
worldview.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that means both ways there are correlations. In one,
Yes.
yeah. One thing I
You can.
noticed in almost all of Shakespeare's dramas, the supernatural plays a significant role.
Ooh,
The witches or the ghosts or something like that speaking.
yes. Yeah. And we're not getting rid of those things. I mean, how many supernatural stories are on YouTube? I mean, how many movies come out every year? Every year, how many supernatural ghost and goblin movies come out? There's a
Yeah.
continuous appetite for those because they're real. People experience these things, and you know they they know these things are real. Yes.
Mm.
Start with ghost stories now.
So in one sense, another way we could put it that if somebody is caught in a very scientific worldview, a scientism developed worldview, where you don't believe in anything beyond the senses, in the
Oh wow.
Shakespearean stories also open the world to that
Yeah,
there is a reality beyond the senses, even if there is
yes.
no explicit picture of God there,
Yes.
but there
Yes.
is definitely a that there is much more to what is that? I think he says Horatio that there is much more in the world than what your philosophy can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. There are many things in the world which is like, yeah, neither your nor my philosophy. I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I should know it. Yeah. There are more
yeah,
things in this world than were ever conceived in your or mine philosophy, Horatio.
yeah. Actually, I also forgot. I quoted that in my book on reincarnation. As
Ah.
a
Yeah.
starting point. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so now the supernatural. I was just trying to analyze that are there some things in Shakespeare which we can say that they couldn't have come from a Christian influence. They like it's not just universal religious themes. Like say that the idea of like a providence shaping the ends, that we could say that is a general religious theme. It doesn't have to be distinctively Vedic or,
No.
but the
No.
idea of yam yam vapis maran, where a person goes at the time of that, I don't know whether it's that explicitly mentioned in the Bible. It does seem to be very strikingly Gita centered.
As ye sow, so shall ye reap. That is there, but
Okay, but
the whole conclusion of Hamlet, uh, because he tries to avoid it himself. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, cursed, time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that I was ever born to set it right. He's just like Arjuna. He does not want to have to deal with this problem. He does not want to deal with it. But then his uncle tries to kill him, but the killers are killed. He's on a boat out of the country, but he's tossed overboard. The ocean brings him back. His own investigation to see if the ghost is telling the truth brings him back. And so finally he's there in the final scene and he tells Horatio, and this I think is maybe one of the most key things in the entire thing. He says, all of us have a destiny, oh Horatio, even though it may be roughly cut, roughly hewn. It's not like it's tied down at every moment. He says, but it's there. You got your kind of limits, and we can but be good players, accepting our destiny, all the world's the stage, the men and women, they're in mere actors. They have their entrances and their exits, and the man in his life plays 7 parts. That's Romeo. That's as you like it, but that is just exactly according to Bhagavad Gita about how's it go?
Vasamsi Jirna.
Yeah,
Dehinos
from youth,
Niyatade.
yeah,
Like the
youth to boyhood to old age.
yeah.
Identical. And Solomon uses the same example. King Solomon, I've heard. So
Okay.
the idea of that we have a karma, in America, you're not going to say, oh, we have karma. Some people now they'll accept it, but the word in America uses is destiny. All of us, it seems that many of us are destined to end up in a certain profession and certain position in life. And so many people, a little more experienced, are going to go, yeah. That was how the Emperor of Japan stopped the Second World War. They wanted to fight on. They were ready to fight on and cause America the death of 2 million people before they surrendered. Yeah, they were ready. Yep, the American army knew it. They knew this is if we invade mainland Japan, we're talking about, look at it. Our plan is there, but it's going to cost us about 2 million people dead before we can accomplish this. And the other side is going to be something like 40 million dead Japanese. But the emperor then surrendered, and he said, the American divine wind has blown, and there can be no reply. After the 2 atomic bombs, that was their idea. They would say, hey, he said, destiny, divine wind. Destiny is now on the side of the Americans, and that's it. You can't fight it. And so they accepted it, And so 42 million people's lives were saved by the introduction of a poetic phrase and at the right moment. Yeah.
Oh.
The American divine wind has blown, and there can be no reply. Yeah.
This is what the Japanese emperor said at that time?
When he surrendered, he gave a surrender, and he actually went against the military council and everything else. It had to be, he recorded it separately in case they would put him under house arrest, so he couldn't say it, so it could be broadcast to the people and stuff on national radio. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Very intense iconography. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I would say in Christianity, I would say the idea is destiny is there. What I understand from the very beginning in Christianity, there was Saint Jerome in Rome with all the society people and good food and good drink. And there was Origen in the desert with the monks who were doing severe austerities and everything else. So Origen was one of the first Christian fathers. He had no trouble with reincarnation. That was running around, the whole thing like that, through Socrates, everybody else, maybe more in Egypt. And he had no problem with reincarnation being a part of Christian philosophy, But Saint Jerome was off there in Rome which was actually their political center. And as far as I understand that the basic point of the Christian fathers at that point was, hey, if we tell these people they got more than one lifetime, they're never going to get serious, And we got to tell them you got one life and that's it, buddy, and you're going to be damned to hell for eternity unless you get it together. So Tamasic Puranas, I think, present the same thing. Tamasic Puranas also talk to that. Your soul will be damned forever if you do these things and so on. Because that sharp motivation is there. So the idea of destiny and being born into a certain destiny, even if it's not coming in Christianity, it's not going to come from a previous life. Your destiny so much. You have an afterlife, but there's no previous life so much. Not much. But about being born into a destiny and God forming your destiny, that's an area I don't know. But see, that's where we need to stimulate these things and have these dialogues and find out if it's a part of that tradition, how it's that's maybe the other side, interfaith dialogue, which is another, maybe 4 major themes we're trying to work on here. We're trying to consolidate all this into all the stuff we've been doing. I'm looking at my death, I'm looking at 2024. What's it called? Odana Shasti. So I'm thinking of leaving the body. So now I've been pushed, everything else, time to consolidate. No new projects. When new projects come over, I just try and stimulate other people to take them up. Don Quixote and Arjuna or something like that. Don Quixote and Vidura, something like that. Something we got here, yeah. So, but okay, other people can do that, So that's what I'm trying to do, just consolidate, like with this program today, put together the stuff we're doing and the resources we have, and ultimately make one movie. We want to put it together, if we can, make one movie called it's called Diary of a Traveling Creature, and it comes from Indudumni Maharaj's Diary of a Traveling Preacher, but we have Diary of a Traveling Creature, the ultimate trip.
Yeah.
And then we've already got on the YouTube, we have the collection of the themes you want to deal with. They're there. And interfaith dialogue, world classical literature, science and the Vedas, and the Bhaktivedanta Library. Those themes we have, usually how we look at them, and then we want to maybe have some dialogue with all these people we've been contacting in the outside world, outside of ISKCON and our community. People in the United Nations, people in very nice Jesuit, such dialogues with religious people is just, we stand shoulder to shoulder against abortion with a lot of people, and we're secular leaders. At one point, I think it was Clinton. They decided let's give abortion on demand, to make it available all throughout the world easily. Some easy process where women can then, maybe before the third month, they can have a very simple process, easily available, and have abortion. That will solve all the problems in the world in terms of hunger and all this kind of stuff, poverty. Okay, we'll do it. So the secular leaders were in favor of it, and they were just shocked beyond belief, because all of the religious leaders in the world, he said normally we're trying to kill each other, we're fighting amongst each other, but it's just something we're all agreed that we're going to put down fighting against each other, because what you're proposing is so wrong and so bad that it's just no way on earth that any of us can even ever come close to being able to not fight to the death against this, abortion beyond demand. And so we're going to stand against this and put all the strength we have, which is not so much, but we'll do it. And it was so shocked that the the secular leaders, they were just shocked. They backed down. They said, "Wow, we don't want to take on Jews, Muslims, Christians, all these guys together. Forget it." Yeah. So there's an example that when interfaith dialogue, but now we're talking about literature.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it's all connected, of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So these are very, very far-reaching and foundational areas. What you're saying, world classical literature, interfaith dialogue, and at least with this interfaith dialogue, our movement has done something. Anuttama Prabhu has done some Christian Vaishnava dialogues, and then Vaishnava Muslim dialogues. That is a huge area, but still at least something has happened. But I don't think hardly anything has been. Science and the Vedas also different devotees are doing something in a small way. But I think world classical literature is not been explored much at all till now. I had a podcast with Hridayand Maharaj, and he mentioned to me that he during some of the traumatic times in our movement's history, he found Jane Austen's writings very helpful. So that is
also in Spanish culture. Maharaj Bhaktisundar Goswami did some things on. It was almost like interreligious. It was more interreligious, because he did a thing, I think, on one very, very powerful Christian saint. And then, of course, Jayawakta Maharaj did Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, that was very good.
Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. So actually, when I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, it was almost a little bit very sectarian kind of worldview I grew in, because in one sense, I had read quite a lot of book Indian authors, Western authors before I was introduced to Krishna consciousness. But now, see, I can quote in our classes, I can quote, say, George Bernard Shaw, or I can quote Oscar Wilde. But but I'm saying that it's difficult for me in today's ISKCON to quote, say, Rabindranath Tagore or some of the other literary giants of the Indian history, because somehow we may see that their philosophy is different from ours, and then maybe they have slightly impersonalistic orientations, but independent of their philosophy, they have a literary legacy which has influenced a lot of people. And we can use that for connecting with people. Just because we quote someone doesn't mean we accept everything that they say.
No.
Like you said about Prabhupada offering respects to Gandhi also. Yeah. So this is sorry.
Hansa Duda. So I have so many citations from him. One time Prabhupada said, "I am Marx, you are Lenin." Yeah.
So, okay.
Because if we keep our Samstapaka Acharya prominent in our lives, and our relationship with him clear, then I think we can do these things. Yeah. And then people say that, okay, I can see that you're, whatever you're saying, is not going to be. I can see you're not going to budge an inch from what you're a guru. What's his name? Bhakti Vedanta. You're not. you're not going to budge an inch from him. You're a fanatic about that. And I can say, well, maybe it's not fanatical. It's you're really attached to him. But okay, and so, yeah, if I try and draw you off into something about Shakespeare, about getting into something else, we keep coming back. Every morning we have Bhagavatam class. Every evening we have Bhagavad Gita class. And it's not just, mechanical. It's also the taste is there. The flavor is wrong. We see that Hamlet didn't have, Shakespeare didn't have it complete. And he was wrong in these areas, and some things are bad. And, we got to take the gold out of the, out of the excrement, Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's nice. So, continuing this point of world classical literature, just maybe two questions I had about Shakespeare. So one is many of his most celebrated plays are tragedies.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah.
Or of course, you could say the world is Dukhalaya and he's depicting that, but it does seem that all of his major stories, not all, but all of his major ones, they seem to end on a very tragic note.
Well, we have Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet,
King
Lear, and Macbeth. And also, what's the other one? Othello.
Midsummer's Night also.
Well, I don't know that one. Yeah.
Okay.
But The Taming of the Shrew is a comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can think of any more, I think also As You Like It is also a comedy. And what's the one? The Tempest.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about science fiction tradition, science fiction movies? Of course, you know Star Wars.
Yes, yes, of course I do. I know a few things.
Okay. I saw one time I was looking on the YouTube, it had maybe the 20 greatest science fiction movies. Because you're looking at traditions, and they're going through this movie and that movie, and for different reasons they're coming up, and they come up to number one. And the guy says before he says, okay, before I tell you what the number one, the greatest science fiction movie of all time was, he says, I don't even have to say it. You all know what it is. In every single category we've listed before, in quality of direction, everything else, you all know it. It wins. It's at 2001 Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey, yeah.
Like Kubrick. Even now, it's incredible. It's incredible. And it deals with very, very ontological questions too. But the most original, first, what people would call, I think, the first real science fiction movie where it has some real, special effects and everything else. And I remember watching this as a little child. My parents took me there. It was what was it called? It was called Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet with Robbie the Robot and all this kind of stuff. And it was so exciting. They fly to some planet, where the scientists got all lost many years before, and the young girls there with this and that, and the monsters there with this and that. And it's very good. It's a very, very good movie. Even now, I tell you the story would be like, oh my goodness, yeah. And so people told the author, they said, hey, that's such a fantastic storyline, and all the imagery and the relationships with the king and all these kind of stuff, And you're looking at them, you said, don't you recognize it? So what do you mean? It's The Tempest. Oh, an island, not a planet. Oh, yeah. It's The Tempest, but I just put everybody with ray guns rather than bows and arrows, and made the dresses a little bit shorter, and and had a science fiction monster rather than yeah. So it's the Tempest is, I think, that's the thing. I don't know. Against this point, I don't know why yeah. So, yeah, I guess in the Bhagavatam, are most of the stories comedies or tragedies?
Comedies. Yeah.
Comedy means
the way Indra acts sometimes, and then he makes a fool of himself.
No, the word comedy is his technical word. Comedy means where it starts out against the protagonist and ends up for him. A tragedy means where it starts out for the protagonist, ends up against him. So it's a technical thing. It doesn't mean it's funny. In classical language, doesn't mean it's funny. Comedy means where it comes out good. The protagonist doesn't end up dead with his wife dead and everybody else dead. Everybody kind of takes arms and is happy and so on. The Bhagavatam, I think, usually comes out with a positive ending in many cases, but not always.
Yeah. At least a
It's nice.
spiritually positive ending, because there is a clear description of the spiritual world. So in
Yeah.
that sense, all the endings are spiritually positive. Materially, like Sudama is materially positive. Sudama's story, Dhruva's story, some of them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know why Shakespeare I don't know. He was. I think he died prematurely because of got too drunk one night and got a fever. That appears to be what happened. He and Ben Jonson overdid it a little bit, and then they got really sick, and then they caught some fever going around. So he died pretty young, 50 years old. So it may have been, he may have been a, what do you call it, depressive, has some depressive personality, and also to the ambience in England at that time, where it was good reason to be depressed about things. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so the tragedy, okay, it's a tragedy, but we get something out of it. So people,
definitely,
life is tragic, but we're learning.
Yes, wow. Like there is some contemporary thinkers who talk about the tragic view of the world or tragic view of life, where basically life is unfair, like resources are not distributed equally. And many of the unfairness of life, we just can't, no matter how much we do, we can't rectify them. We have to live with them. So in some ways that, like you said, acceptance of destiny, acceptance of distress in life, that is also depicted through Shakespeare. And that also is a theme which our Mahabharata, Ramayana talk about it. There's a lot of distress and something just come without we being able to do anything about it, no matter how much we try.
Yeah. And also Prabhupada says the Mayavadi is focused on the negative aspect of the material world. And we focus on the positive aspect. But we have to have both. The Sahaja is focused on the positive aspect. The Mayavadi is focused on the negative aspect of spirituality.
Okay.
So Isa Upanishad says you've got to cultivate both. Understand the negative aspects and understand the positive aspects. But we tend to focus on the positive aspects. That's our idea. Enthusiasm is more important than patience. But so there's some the Mayavadi philosopher, was it Britrahari? That Mayavadi Brahmacharya. Yeah, was it Vairagya Shataka or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't think there's anybody on the face of the earth who's ever, badmouth material nature better than him.
Bad-mouthing material nature.
It's like, and so that's. I think all of, even for example, all of these things. I'm trying to think now of Shakespeare's plays. This is why it's nice, but I think there's a positive. Romeo and Juliet, they both die, and if her brother dies, there's a whole thing of Gandhari. Was it the Gandhari and was it Gandhari? No, was it? It was Dhritarashtra's wife, Gandhari. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's I think it's her. No, Rukmini. The kidnap of Rukmini and Romeo and Juliet and Rukmini and Krishna. Is it the icons? But when Romeo and Juliet, when everybody's dead, and the two families who were engaged in a civil war for so long, they having the count comes in for county and chastises both of them, these two families, and said, just see what this war has done, this civil war, your pride has done. It's destroyed your most beloved children. Now they're dead because of what you've done. So the drama, they look at each other and they go into the funeral thing, and instead of hating each other, they look at each other and the two leaders, they grasp arms and they go in holding arms like that. Okay, we see that God's going to teach us a lesson, that we have to give up this feud and this hate. And so that's the thing. I think in all of Shakespeare's tragedies, there's a tremendous amount of lesson going on what is right and what is wrong, and deeper values. Oh boy, what is it? Lady Macbeth. Oh, that's just full of stuff. I mean, Dhritarashtra. I mean, Macbeth. Macbeth. In the end, he has to. His wife goes nuts and leaves him holding the bag for the entire thing. She gets out of. She caused the whole problem of murdering his friend.
Yeah.
And then she escapes by going crazy. So now nobody can get after her. His best friend is leading an army against him. The omens, the gods have turned against him. The Burnham Wood has come to Dunsinore, you know. So the very, very famous thing, he's sitting there seeing all his whole world just collapse, like Dhritarashtra. So here's a perfect example of Dhritarashtra, and what's his name, King Lear,
King Lear, yeah.
Macbeth, sitting there in his room alone at night. The battle's going to happen the next day, and the candle's burning, and he said, life is a tale told by a poor player, poor actor, who fruts and struts his hour upon the stage and then is gone, who is heard no more. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Out, brief candle. Wind blow, storm crack. At least we'll die with armor on our back. So this is perfect example of a Dhira, no? It's Dhira, all this stuff has happened, Dhritarashtra, everything else, and he becomes Dhira, right? He just turns his back on everything and walks out and faces the enemy and faces his death, Baba says, like a good soldier. And so this soliloquy is so famous. Wind blows, storm crack, all this stuff happening. At least we'll die with armor on our back. Yeah.
Oh.
So
even in the
that's Dhira. He didn't achieve Narottam. He didn't achieve Vaishnavism.
Yeah. In one sense, so it's not just tragedy, but it's how the characters evolve in the face of the tragedy.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I think even Hamlet does that. In the last play, Hamlet is quite in one sense stoic and resigned. He fights and everything, but later on, he is most of the play he's quite mad, and he's almost seems incoherent. But toward the end, what he speaks and how he acts is quite, like you said, Dhira. So
lucid, huh?
Yeah.
I think Dhira, like you're saying, Dhira is a big theme in Shakespeare, but for some people, that's all they can do. That's all they can accomplish. Dhritarashtra, even though he had Vidura for a guru, he could not come beyond the level of Dhira. But he was able to achieve that. Okay, that's okay. So Buddha was giving stuff much beyond the contemporary atmosphere. Shankara was giving stuff much beyond the contemporary atmosphere, but only a few people were able to take it. So what we're able to give on the broad, global basis, what will that be?
Oh, sorry. How are you connecting Shankara and Buddha with? Are you connecting with Shakespeare? Or
No, because Buddha. There's a famous story about the bamboo leaves in the forest.
Yeah.
That I can teach you many things, but I'm only going to teach you a few. But don't think that that's all. In the same way, Bhaja Govinda, Shankara is attributed with saying these things, but that wasn't what people could appreciate at that time. So how much we have to adjust. Maybe we end up doing a lot of preaching on the level to people. We'll be put in a position where our responsibility is to preach to people to become Dhira, Nitai Gaur Sundar Das. Nitai Gaur Sundar Das. He was reason I'm in Nashville. He's the head of our institute. He's my good friend. We have a nonprofit educational corporation, NEOS. You can go to our webpage, Jayarama. Plug my webpage here. Jayarama.us is my webpage. And neosnimbus.org is our esoteric organization, NEOS. He works, his job is he's head of geriatric psychiatry at the local psychiatric hospital, pretty big place. So he's dealing with all these people at the end of their lives, And because it's Nashville, the head of the Bible Belt, I would say, when he starts consulting with them and now starting to take them and their families to this, dealing with these old age problems, senile dementia, he said the first question he asked them, one of them is, do you believe in God? In other places, you can't ask that. But here, because everybody's Christian, everything else is considered quite a bona fide question. And somebody even if they don't, they're atheists. They'll say, well, I don't believe in God. But many people do. And that changes a whole lot in terms of the geriatric psychiatry and what they're dealing with and stuff, and how he's dealing with them, and talking to them. It has to be pretty quick because it's modern medicine, But okay, so he can talk about God here and facing old age and these kind of things, but he can't talk about ghosts. Like that. And there were I remember he was telling me when he was a young man here, maybe 30 years ago, coming as his residency, he said so many of his patients were haunted by ghosts, but he couldn't talk about it because they put him in a mental hospital. One of the biggest battles in the entire Civil War was fought here. I mean, if you come with me, get in my car, and in something like 7 minutes, I can take you to a graveyard which will just 10,000 gravestones, one after another, side by side. They fought it out here, jabbing steel bayonets into each other's stomachs, biting each other's ears off, blowing their heads off. I mean, it was, let it go, fella. No, the way people died here, they just couldn't give up the horror. And so then people with mental problems, they started to grab onto their bodies and stuff, to try and sort it out. So anyway,
Okay.
there's cosmology and everything else. I would say it's coming through Christian tradition. There was a lot of depression in the time of Shakespeare. It wasn't a nice place, but at the same time too, there's also you see a lot of beauty there too. There's a lot of beauty and appreciation of nature and stuff. And maybe people are dwelling on the tragedies more, but I showed the Taming of the Shrew. Do you know the Taming of the Shrew?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Do you know who the most famous movie presentation of that, starring an actor and an actress? Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they say, the parts they were born to play. It was like this. This was like who they were, and they fit in there so well. So I showed it, and it had a Spanish captions in it, a Spanish overdub. So we did it one night, and I had to edit it down, But we did it one night as a program in Chile. Maybe some of the devotees in the audience here remember that. And of course, it stimulated such discussion afterwards, because it's such a comedy, and it's at the same time too, it's full of very kind of deep things about what are men and women, what are their relationships and stuff, and it stimulates these discussions. So the conclusion is, in the end, Elizabeth Taylor surrenders and bows down to her husband and honors him in so many ways and accepts his authority, And so I asked in the end, well, what do you believe this is a correct conclusion? And some of the girls were like, no, we're not. I don't think we would fully agree with it, but it definitely stimulates this question, and it's a comedy, and the conclusion is very nice, so on. So there we have it, and it stimulates this whole discussion about Varna Ashram, Daivi Varna Ashram, and these kind of things like that. Yeah. Wow.
Amazing.
Yes.
This is remarkable resourcefulness. I have sometimes used some sections from the Avatar movie to talk about Avatar, or even the Matrix movie to talk about some higher things. But this is remarkable. You're Taming of the Shrew and using it to talk about gender roles, and so in one sense.
But are you doing the Ramayana or the Mahabharata for your morality lessons?
Oh, I'm doing both. I'm designing.
Yeah.
During this pandemic, I'm designing courses now, because not just books, but also make systematic online courses to talk about human values.
Yeah, and so you use Indian classics, aren't you? You're using Mahabharata and Ramayana.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that, Maharaj. Yes.
Yeah, you're doing the same thing, but it's just because it's from your culture, your perspective. Yeah. And also, too, I'm 72 years old. How are you? How old are you?
I'm around 45, Maharaj.
Oh, young man.
Young man.
Papa said that. Papa said 40, 50, young man. Yeah, so I've been doing this longer, and so on. So by the time you're 72 years old, if you go on, Prabhupada is a big rock that hit the water. And when he hit the water and sunk, passed through the water, it created a wave. but the waves that are going to come after are even going to be, going to be bigger even. Yeah. I mean, they influencing people like you and me for generations. Hansaduda invited Prabhupada to Germany. He went there and it was a very incredible visit. Then he asked him to come again. And Prabhupada said, Germans were the materially most intelligent people on the planet. And then Hansaduda invited him to come again. He said, no, I cannot go there again. There are people there who would kill me. And so I think that the German demons were the only ones maybe who were smart enough to figure out how dangerous Prabhupada really was. This man is not because he's taking some hippies and making them into a movement. This man is disseminating a cultural revolution on a very deep level. And unless we eliminate this man, we're going to have big problems. So that's what I see is just, myself. And I'm just trying to go on, and I may take birth in our Gurukul system again. So I'm trying to help the Gurukula system because, I may read my own books and say, oh, that's a good book.
It's, I feel that through this discussion today, you have opened so many horizons about how Krishna consciousness can be made accessible to people from diverse audiences. And one metaphor which you used in the beginning, we just passed over, but like Prabhupada laid many foundations on which we have not built.
Yeah.
So, some foundations we have worked a lot, like build temples, distribute books, and that's important. But Prabhupada also had discussions with dialogue with many intellectual people, and that was not primarily for converting them in a sense. It is just to exchange thoughts and gain some and help them appreciate Krishna consciousness at some level. So
when he has, Toynbee, I remember, I think I was listening to his dialogue with Toynbee. Toynbee's conclusion, his father was a gigantic economist. Toynbee's conclusion was that the history of international relations was a history of religion. Dimitri Katsikas, big professor we were working with, said the same thing, that the history of international relations, which was his job, is a history of religion, and different religions go behind it. So as I remember the dialogue when Prabhupada was talking with Toynbee, the whole humor was, my God, I finally met a man with a brain. And Prabhupada was like, because Toynbee was just right on top of all the politics and everything that was happening in India. And he asked something about why Indira Gandhi did this and that, and was it because of this? And Prabhupada was going, yes, exactly. Yes, that's exactly why she did it. And that's the reason behind the thing. And so, again, Prabhupada told Swarup Damodar Maharaj, Swarup Damodar told me, the Prabhupada told him, every scientist you make a devotee is worth 1,000 ordinary people. But my experience is that it takes 1,000 times longer to make one scientist into a devotee than it takes, to get ordinary people to become devotees and get involved and everything else. Scientists many times slow to come and slow to leave. When they're convinced on a gyan level, and that's hard to shake. If you're convinced on a karma level, I like the rituals, I like the food, I like this, I like that, and some of the philosophy, you can be, shaken, and maybe out of 1,000 people converted like that, one of them will become, powerful. So it's just have your choice, convince one scientist to become a devotee or convince 1,000 ordinary people to become devotees. It's going to take you the same amount of time, and the same amount of blood will have to be given to do it.
That's an amazing
Somebody
thought.
else may want to convince Vaishya to become a devotee. Okay? Henry Ford, his name, Ambarish.
Yeah. And that's an amazing thought, actually. Intellectually oriented people do take time. They don't immediately accept the party line, or they don't accept easy answers to questions. So, I've seen in India, and no criticism, India, our preaching is flourishing a lot. And I can say that we are attracting intelligent young people, but not so many intellectual young people. That means intelligent, they are in engineering colleges and they're in the STEM fields. So they're very intelligent, but they're not really philosophically oriented, thinking about the big questions of life or even the big issues of life. So they become devotees very easily. But right now, for example, I'm one of the editors for Back to Godhead. So we always run short of articles because there are not so many devotees who are
Yeah.
really good
Yeah.
writers.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I think that
There was one indigenous person, Ishi. It's a very famous thing. He was because when the Northern Europeans came to California, so many of the tribes were killed either by diseases or starvation, or they just merged in. And one whole tribe was just basically, some were actually killed, for certain reasons and the conflict of the economic and everything else. Um, so, but Ishi was the last guy of one whole tribe that had been destroyed. Maybe not so many people. They just all died out, everything else. In the end, he was just hiding out with his mother and one woman who was that wasn't his sister or anybody else. And when they died, he just kind of just came out. And one cultural anthropologist at the University of California adopted him and got him a job as an assistant janitor because he refused to accept charity. And so they assistant janitor, and he worked there. And then he would interview him, and it was a whole series of lectures on what their culture was, before this European culture came. And he took him places, and you can see the nostalgia was actually hurting him, so he didn't stay too long. But he was showing him where things had gone on. He showed him how to start a fire with just with the bow and the stick, and how to hunt and everything else. And he was, but you could see it was just too painful. So they did something, but so many things. And after all this, he was realizing that they had their view of the world, and he actually began to realize how Ishi was looking at Europeans, and it's the same thing that Carl Jung got. He said that they are like, his view was, they are like children, clever but not wise.
beautiful.
Yeah. So you become very clever with all these engineering abilities and everything else, but not wise. Yeah. Ooh, that's a bad one. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Tell some
Bhaktivinoda
engineering
Thakur
guy that. Yeah. Yeah.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur also had
Yeah.
he made a comparison that irked some of his more nationalistic colleagues. He said that the Western people say, like, if there is a father who has two children, two sons, and one of them is more evolved, more spiritually oriented, and the other is more interested in finances, management. So both of them can work together. Let the
Yes.
younger brother take care of the finances, and let
Yes.
the older brother pursue spiritual pursuits and share spiritual wisdom.
Yes.
So he envisioned that to be like the British and the Indians. So he said that we are all descended from the same stock, and let the British manage the country. We will share spiritual wisdom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow.
that's very similar.
Wow.
Mm.
We're seeing the same truth everywhere. Yeah.
Yes,
Which means that
Maharaj,
we can apply the same medicine then. Once you start to see these principles, we know, okay, this is the problem. Okay. And we can identify that all these people who are graduating from the universities are not universal men; they're technicians. Starting to turn out technicians rather than universalists. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. But
Amazing.
maybe we should take a pause here.
Yes, Maharaj. Usually
2 hours.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj. Toward the end, I try to summarize. Of course, we had a very wide-ranging discussion. But can I try to summarize briefly what we discussed? Okay.
You can try. You can try.
Yes, Maharaj.
Wow.
So today we discussed on the broad theme of seeing Western classical literature and specifically Shakespeare from a spiritual or a Krishna conscious perspective. And then we started by discussing that there are, like Prabhupada himself, you gave many insights about Prabhupada, which you don't know, like Prabhupada gave a talk on Merchant of Venice, and Prabhupada talked about how there is universal iconography which connects with the heart at the deeper level beyond the brain. And if we can speak, so why at all we study Shakespeare? Just like Yukta Vairagya means we can use technology and other things in Krishna's service. So even books, some people study books, they live with books, and books, ideas, worldviews, they can also be used in Krishna's service. So broadly, two ways. One is that if they're already familiar with those books, and then we build bridges by which the knowledge which we are sharing becomes accessible. And another point is that because these books also talk about universal themes, so they can even guide us. It's not just sharing spiritual wisdom, but just the human journey can be guided Like you mentioned how at the time when devotees are suddenly asked to take second initiation, you compare that with the Hamlet scene of Gertrude suddenly marrying
Mhm.
again. So,
Yeah.
so both. Then we talked about the universal themes, like there is the betrayal and uncle betraying nephews and
Mm.
things like that. So they are very common. And then we also talked about the philosophy of the ontology. So so the cases of, say, for example, praying as repentance and thinking that I cannot get forgiveness if I'm still holding on,
Mhm.
and that Claudius saying that. And then especially very striking was uh, Hamlet saying that I don't want to kill him right now because he will go to
Yeah. Yeah.
heaven. Yam yam
Yeah.
vapis paran bhavam. So those are very remarkable correlations. So it's both ways, not just universal themes, but they're also specific, not only universal human challenges, but also specific philosophical themes. The
Yeah.
idea of existence beyond death, the idea of ghosts, the existence of, as you said, uh, destiny, a divine
Yeah.
end shaping human,
Yeah.
a divine plan shaping human ends. So all these are, and then all these are very strikingly similar to the Vedic teachings, Gita's teachings. And then there's a source mentioned that in the Christian tradition there is not much philosophy, so they often draw a lot of philosophy from the Greco-Roman worldview,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's how now so Shakespeare was at a time, Cervantes and Shakespeare, remarkable correlation you showed.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that it was that the ambience was such that there was at one level a lot of strife, and lot was going on at that time. It was a religiously surcharged and religiously polarized place. But at the same time, from there, he is not only drawing from Roman themes, like say
Ah.
Julius Caesar, but he's also like explicit stories, but he's also bringing in that wisdom and sharing it. And then you talked about how Srila Prabhupada, I think two, three different metaphors which I found very striking, but this was that Prabhupada laid foundations for many things which he wanted us to build on. So
Yeah.
just like regard for intellectual engagement, you give the examples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, studying Advaitavad to accept initiation. He at least knew about Advaitavad to take initiation there. Jiva Goswami studied Mimamsa in the and other schools of thought in Sandarbhas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, that he engaged with other religious traditions. So
Mhm.
he said that we can draw some things from them, we respect them. And you also mentioned, I never thought of it that way, from the perspective of Yukta Vairagya, that when the gopis worship Katyayani, they're showing that even other forms of worship can be used in Krishna's service. So the scope of Yukta Vairagya is very huge. And for generally, there is some reservation for this kind of engagement with books and ideas. The one reason is because most devotees are not so much into, most people in general are not into reading books and things.
Yeah.
So if they are anyway going to read limited, then better focus on
Yeah.
direct scriptures. But those who have an avid interest in books, instead of, once they are grounded in Prabhupada's teachings, they said that then we can, if we are connected with Prabhupada, then we can actually bring connections and bridges with various other people. You give the example of Socrates, Phaedo, that how well-read people, they may think that, no, you say your tradition is the greatest, but
Yeah.
have you read other traditions? Can you bring about correlations between them?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
help them gain appreciation. And for
Yeah.
this, so one side is, for such outreach, we will need some, not everybody can do it, those who are already interested in reading and those who are that orientation. And then the outreach also will be little more refined, in the sense that we may not have thousands of people becoming devotees, but their consciousness will rise. And that itself, like you mentioned, how what Shankaracharya and Buddha taught was way more than what the people at that time got from them. So we also have to see how much we can, from what we teach, how much people get. And in that connection, when we present, that was a very striking point, which that one scientist is equal to 1,000 devotees, ordinary devotees.
Thousand ordinary people.
Ordinary people, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
but to make a scientist into a devotee, we may
Yeah.
require
Yeah. Yeah.
a thousand times more effort. And that was, you quote about the American, Native American, saying that these Westerners were clever but not wise. So like that, we may be getting technicians, but we're not really getting thinkers. So if we expand our if we expand our ambit of how we can serve Krishna, so then there are so many more avenues. So you talk specifically about 4 areas you are working on: world classical literature, science in the Vedas, then interfaith, and then the Bhaktivedanta library. So
Yeah.
these are, I feel, these are very far-reaching endeavors, and I know there are many other points, but I think I tried to summarize as much as I could. You want to add something in conclusion, Maharaj?
No, I'm just amazed that you can remember everything. Past 50 years old, your short-term memory starts to fall apart. So I can remember.
That was one thing I was going to say when you said, if I am at the age of 70, if I even have 1/10 of your energy or your clarity, I would consider myself extremely fortunate and blessed. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Also, we have some of our followers. We had two university professors here on board, and cinematographers, and we call it graphic artists, and so many nice people also listening in our audience right now. And it's been a motivation for me to have other people here with us, and being able to give us an impetus to talk, thinking, oh, these are the kind of people who can understand this and that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for being able to participate here.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for sparing your time and sharing your wisdom. I look forward to having sometime again in future to have further discussions. Maybe on Kalyang. Maybe on Kalyang we can go deeper sometime.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Humble obeisances.
Recording stopped.